Comic.
All right, hello everybody. How's it going? Welcome to Comic Book Radio. I'm your host Peter Cimetti. Thank you guys for being here for this 200th episode. This is episode 200. I cannot believe it. And it worked out wonderfully too because we have such a great guest for tonight. We got ATHENA Finger on the show to talk about the life and legacy of Bill Finger, co-creator of Batman. Don't you forget it. Now, before I bring her on, I want to talk to you guys for just a second and say hello. We got Dr. Mask here. What's up, Doc? Hope you're doing good. We got Geronimo Draws in the chat. What's up, Rob? Says looking forward to this, Pete. I'm looking forward to it, too. So grateful to spend some time with her tonight. What Geeks Do Network says, hey, chat, congratulations, Pete, on your 200th episode. Keep them coming. Well, thank you, man. Appreciate that. We also got Carbon Dioxide here. Says, Batman changed my life. Been my obsession since I was 2 years old. Thank you, Bill Finger. So there you go. Dale A. What's up, Dale? Says, really enjoyed the Batman and Bill documentary. And Doc says, just promoting Alterna. I appreciate that. Cole King, what's up, Cole? Says, good to see you calling it early tonight, but I'll catch the replay tomorrow. Well, thank you very much. And TJ Rex is here as well. What's up, TJ? Thank you so much for the congratulations about the 200th episode. Couldn't do this without you guys. All right, so now without further ado, let's bring her on, the woman of the hour, Miss ATHENA Finger. What's up?
Hi, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm doing well, on this great Tuesday evening.
Yeah. And like I said before the show started, thank you so much for spending some time with me tonight. This is something I've been looking forward to since I first reached out to you. And I'm so glad you agreed to come on the show, and I think we're going to have a great conversation.
I love talking about Bill Finger and everything else that has to do with comics or geekdom, so thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So I want to get started with, when did you first realize that your grandfather was co-creator of Batman?
I was very young. I don't really remember a time where obviously when I was like 2 maybe. But I've always known the history. My dad would tell me stories when I was little, so it was part of his story that he was trying to make sure lived on. So
yeah. Did that kind of thing seem to have an impact on you in a positive way? Because, sometimes that information can come across and you want to share it with others and people don't believe you or they treat you differently or however. So it's not always positive. How did that kind of information impact you?
Well, growing up in the 80s, we didn't have all of the social media and internet yummies and goodies that we can look up right away. So growing up, if I did talk about it, people would question, not necessarily believe. It is what it is. I was upset when I was younger about it because, I was proud of what my family had accomplished. Obviously, Batman's a huge character, so it was like, okay, don't believe me, but that's part of my family. So, I got selective as I got older who I would tell. And there were people that I knew that would appreciate them knowing that piece of information that my grandfather was the co-creator. So, you learn as you get older.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure if anyone has seen the Batman and Bill documentary that was released a few years back, there's a lot of people even that absolutely love the character of Batman but had no idea of Bill Finger, let alone his tremendous contribution. Did you get a chance to meet your grandfather at all?
No, unfortunately, he passed away a couple years before I was born, so I never got to meet him. And a lot of the stuff I've learned about him is through other people. I mean, even my father passed away when I was young, so I didn't have him. And, Portia, my grandmother, who was married to Bill, passed away before my father passed away. So, I mean, it's like I had very few people to get any kind of stories or information about Bill and his life and his career.
Yeah, man. When it comes to something like that, in terms of your grandfather's legacy and everything revolving around how huge this character is, when did the at least the awareness to fight for the co-creator credit, when did that start to creep into your life?
Um, well, I mean, I knew that there were some attempts that my father and obviously didn't make any progress with. Um, and then when he passed away, I was just before my 16th birthday, so it's kind of a big burden to take on at that age. And I was discouraged at the time. That was in the early 90s. I was in high school and I was dealing with 15-year-old problems. And I had just lost my father, so I was dealing with that also. So I was kind of discouraged at the time to even like pursue anything. Um, which is not what you want to hear. You want to fight for, your family, of course. Um,
Oh, I mean, well, it's completely understandable, especially in the situation that you were in, you know.
yeah, I mean, it was an unusual, unique situation that I thought nobody else was put in, not knowing the history of comics because it's not really a medium that I gravitated towards.
Yeah.
Uh, so, you know, I I didn't really start pursuing anything until the author Mark Tyler Nobleman had gotten in touch with me about the book that he had written. He was also the main focus of the documentary and his research. And so he had reached out to me and he, had shown that he was like a legitimate author doing like a real book and not just an Uber fan who figured out who I was, you know. So I was like, okay, I can take him a little serious. And then he really encouraged me to like reach out to DC and start kind of navigating the whatever I had to navigate that I had no idea like really what to do because, I'm just a math teacher. I'm not a
Well,
lawyer and
well,
I'm not in the
can you
industry.
can you take me back to some of those first steps, like that initial conversation with him, where he's kind of letting you know that this is something that should be pursued and that you could possibly make it a reality?
He was just persistent. I mean, he had made it his life mission to see Bill get the byline, which I mean, our family had always wanted that. It's just he didn't know I existed. Most people didn't know I existed who were Batman fans who were interested in the Batman story.
Yeah.
Um, DC knew I existed. Even right after my father passed away, they knew I existed. They knew I existed because I had been in touch with them even in my early 20s. So it's the general population that didn't know I existed. So when he had found someone that could actually fight for the byline, he just chomped on and wouldn't let go and was like, no, you have to do this. And I just, I had a lot of personal trauma surrounding this whole Batman issue between the loss of my father and then what happened afterwards with
Mm.
the whole mess of it being taken from the family and like just a whole big problem mess that I really didn't know what to do with, nor did I really want to do anything with it because I was just like, I have no idea how to navigate this. So, I mean, luckily he convinced me.
Have
And
things been different for you since that point? That was around what, 2015, right, when they actually started to officially recognize? him as a
Yeah.
co-creator?
Yes, that's when we officially came to an agreement, and they gave him the pilot. Yes.
Fantastic, man. Now, to give everybody a bit of a framing of the situation at the time with Bill Finger and Bob Kane, Bill was, with a bunch of other people at that point in time, a ghostwriter. So he wasn't really given the full creative credit that he was due, because it was just viewed as, well, you just come on board to work for this thing, and you just do what you got to do involving the story, the character, etc., and then that's about it. Especially at the time, I gotta imagine early on, a lot of people don't really think these things are going to become the cultural phenomenons that they eventually do become. But once stuff like that hits, and you've got all these aspects of it, I mean, Bob Kane even admitted years later, after your grandfather unfortunately passed away, about the tremendous contribution, saying like 50 to 75% of the character creatively and the world around him, he feels that Bill had contributed to it. And at that point in time, it really is like, I don't know, I can guess as to why DC Comics maybe didn't do what they did, or Warner Brothers at the time, or Time Warner, if you want to say you want to go to the top and
Yeah,
at that point in time.
Changed hands so many times.
But yeah, it's good to see that eventually they did give him that co-creator credit. But why do you think it is that, and I believe around 89, when the movie had come out with Michael Keaton, that Bob Kane had said that quote was out there. Why do you think it is that DC or their parent companies didn't want to acknowledge Bill Finger?
They want to give money. It always comes down to the bottom line. And, you're talking about corporations. We're not talking about people. Corporations do not have morals, and they do not have ethics. They have a bottom line, and that's what they're concerned about. So that's why they didn't do anything about it, because they weren't being forced to do anything about it.
Now, have you been
receiving? I talked to them before I pursued anything. When I first went to DC back in 2008 to go meet with Paul Levitz, which is an amazing experience, they had me come to, I was in New York. I went to the office. Like, everyone was like, we know what your grandfather did for Batman and comics, and we wish that he had the byline. And that's what I heard time and time again. So, that kind of plays into the point of why it was kind of resolved. The people who were running the company, by the time it came to Bill Finger getting credit, were the Uber fans that wanted to give him credit, but they needed to have someone force them to do it. And they weren't going to make it easy. Believe me, they did not make it easy. It was not a pleasant experience.
I can imagine.
It could have been a lot worse. Let me say, it could have been a lot worse, but it wasn't pleasant.
How, rough estimate, how many years would you say that it took you, once you started really pursuing it, how many years did it take you to finally get that credit in 2015?
Oh, it took me 3 years. In 2012, they kind of forced my hand when they tried to terminate my rights. So they tried to be sneaky with it.
And have you received compensation since, in some way, shape, or form?
I'm not allowed to talk about that stuff. I'm sorry.
Okay, I understand. I have to ask.
It's okay. I can't. There's details that I am not allowed to talk about. So.
Understood. Now, in terms of your grandfather's legacy in comics, because obviously he was the co-creator of Batman, but man, he created all kinds of characters, all kinds of mythos within Batman. If anyone watching this now or later is not familiar with Bill Finger, feel free. Look him up. Look up his contributions.
Go to the DC database and look him up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, were you at least aware on some level of maybe some kind of history that was involved between Bill and Bob Kane? Any
I mean,
kind
I
of
knew
relationship that
that
they might have had?
I knew that there was some kind of initial partnership, but as far as anything good between them, I didn't see that from my dad. When Bob Kane was on 60 Minutes back in '89 promoting the movie, I remember watching that episode with my dad and how upset he was about it because of the amount of I did this and it's mine and it's all about me kind of coming through the interview when really he should have been talking about not just his contributions, but everybody's contributions. And, he was also very upset because Lynn, Bill's second wife, had also reached out to Warner Brothers and asked if they could do some kind of honor to Bill, give him a mention, give him a something in the movie, and they just declined. So it was just like it was super raw. It was
Not
very
not even like a special thanks or something like that. They throw those around to like the catering company.
yeah, no, nothing.
That's disturbing.
It was like the dirty black sheep of the family that nobody wanted anyone to
Do
acknowledge.
you think it was like it would open up this Pandora's box sort of thing?
Yes, I think they were more afraid that if they had done anything, that would open them up to some kind of legal attack from the family.
Wow.
I
Man.
mean, that's again, they have to protect what's theirs. They make so much money off the Batman title and they have for decades, especially after '89. And I mean, even just as a comic book, the popularity of it from day one. I mean, even when it's slumping, it's still doing well. It's still their top seller.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, they're gonna protect their top dollar. That's base. And again, we're talking about corporations, no morals, no ethics.
Man, oh man. I can hear the love in your voice.
I'm trying to get better at that. Come on, don't point it out.
You know, and it is that's the thing. It's a sore spot I can imagine for your dad, who grew up obviously with your grandfather, that was put in this state where he should have gotten his due and his credit and had a very illustrious and well-known career, and unfortunately wasn't given any of that, and eventually rather quickly in a way got out of comics. And
Well,
then it was a sad, tragic story to him.
I mean, he was forced out, and then he came crawling back because he needed money to eat. It's really the end of Bill's story is just so sad. It really is.
Yeah,
And
especially
the amount of creativity that he put into the comic industry. Because I
yeah,
mean, it's not just Batman. I mean, the other really huge character that it came up with was Green Lantern. And look at what happened with that universe that blew up, all starting with Alan Scott that he co-created. You wouldn't have that whole universe without the stories that he came up with for Alan Scott. And Wildcat also, I mean, and so many more. I mean, he wrote for Superman and came up with some really key stories for that. He wrote for Timely, which is
yeah,
Marvel, if you don't know. So I mean, he was like very, important within the industry. I mean, so were so many others. I'm not saying he was the only one, but I mean, I consider him part of that founding father.
oh, absolutely,
Because there was so much talent and creativity coming out of those bullpens. They really were. They were just coming and coming, and characters and storylines and what works and what doesn't work, and
yeah, absolutely. He's absolutely a founding father. If he didn't do the work that he did, that obviously resonated so deeply with so many for so long. Not just for the Batman character, but in general for comic books, for the industry. Uh, there wouldn't be the comic industry as we know it today. There wouldn't be the movies, there wouldn't be the merchandise, there wouldn't be all these things that mean so much to so many. And I mean, he's comic book royalty and was treated like he barely was a peasant. It's
I think he was more treated like the fool.
yeah.
He was consumed with his craft, and so he just got led around and thrown the scraps. And he made everyone entertained. That's why I say he's the fool, because that's what the fool did. He entertained everyone, but he wasn't treated very well.
It's and I don't know. I've never met Bob Kane. I don't know him personally. I obviously I don't know your grandfather personally. I don't know many of the people involved in this scenario personally, but it really is difficult to have, and I can only imagine how you feel about it being much, much, much closer. But for me, and I'm sure a lot of other fans can say the same thing, it's very difficult to harbor positive feelings for some of the people involved with this that let it go the way that it went, especially knowing how it did end up going for Bill along the way. Now, I don't want to turn it into a sad story necessarily, but it's very difficult to overlook those parts and tell a complete story, or at least get your view on it. Is there anything that happened along the way for you involving your family or something along the lines of your career or your trajectory in life where you felt that this had some kind of an impact that maybe it could have gone a different way?
Um,
And I know that's a very it's a hard hitting kind of question, so feel free to pass if you don't want to mention
no,
anything.
it's. I know things played out the way that they were supposed to. I just wish my dad was there to see it. That's the missing piece. Because he really did want it for his dad. Really did.
Yeah, I hear you. That's some tough stuff. I mean, I started my own comic company 18 years ago, 100% creator ownership.
Amazing.
Even if creators leave, even whatever happens, when they're here and when they're gone, whatever, they always have the rights to their stuff. If they get a movie deal and it goes great, they keep it. People are like, "Well, Pete, what would you do? We'll print more books." If they want to broker a video game deal, a toy deal, make a T-shirt, do all these other things, they can do that.
Right?
If they leave, there's not even a question in my mind. I couldn't even sleep at night if I was like, no, 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 no. I still keep this, amount of percentage of your creation, 100% off the bat, always. And there's never been even a question about that, no matter what has ever happened with any creator that I've ever published. That kind of thing to me is that is so important. That's so integral. This is what people or this is in essence part of what and who they are. And to kind of deprive them of that and just say, well, it was a work for hire, or it was a contract, or it was this, or it was that, I think is absolutely questionable at best and undeniably wrong at worst. But that's how I personally feel about it, and I didn't structure my publishing company to be that way. So, right. But I'm not sure if you're aware necessarily in terms of the comic industry, the way a lot of things have been going on over the course of time throughout it. But do you think... What were you going to say? I don't want to cut you off.
I know that it had a pretty shady start. I mean, the mafia is really what started the comic book industry. So it only goes in line that the dealings behind, you know, those doors were not of the best for everyone involved. So, I mean, some of those values unfortunately have been held on to throughout the years and through the decades of, what's the best deal for the title and not the artist and the writer who is providing the title.
Now, do you have? Let me rephrase this. What are your thoughts on Bob Kane?
So, I mean, I know people want me to bash him. I know, because I've had fans be like, why can't you just say that you hate him? And the problem is that I can't really hate someone that I don't know. He's never done anything to me personally. Now, he's done things to my family that was not okay. But, he had his ambitions and he knew talent when he saw it and was able to put it together and create something. Yes, he also created. People want to fight me on that one too. But he did. And, he played a role in it. And he was able to bring him and Bill together to start the initial spark. And then once he brought Jerry in to fix the artwork and collaborate on more characters and storylines, we have what we have today. And so without what Bob's initial, concept, even though it wasn't the greatest, but he was trying to copy Superman. You have to think about context of what was going on at the time. And so, that was his role. And from there on, he made himself a villain. He did it to himself. I don't have to do it for him. I don't.
Yeah, and I don't need you to. I'm not looking for you to say that you hate Bob Kane or anything like that. But I appreciate your honesty and you're level-headed, and I'm sure it took a while to get to that. I can only imagine your level-headed approach to that.
I guess that's the mathematician in me.
Now, what was it like getting into the thick of it in terms of getting that co-creator credit for your grandfather? What were some of the things you went through? Now, I have watched the documentary, so I'm going to act like I didn't watch the documentary.
Okay.
All right. In case you're like, wait, didn't you just, So I'm going to, let's.
People have not seen the documentary, but they are going to go to Hulu and they are going to watch the documentary if they haven't seen it, because it's actually really good.
Yeah. I almost didn't. I put it off for a few years because I almost didn't want to watch it because I didn't know if it was going to piss me off.
Ooh.
And I don't mean about taking a side. If anything, I meant more about I didn't know if it would piss me off in the way of that it would downplay Bill Finger's contribution. So I was like, I don't know if I want to see it. People were telling me, you gotta watch it, Pete. As a creator-owned guy, you gotta check it out. And eventually I was like, okay. I got around to getting like a Hulu free trial one of these days. And then I watched it. It was one of the first things I watched. And I'm glad that it came about. It's very important, and we should not have this kind of thing ever happen again. It's one of those moments in comic history of not any other kind of creative media where that should be something that never happens to another creator.
I fully agree. It shouldn't happen anywhere, because it's not just in comics that it's happened. It happens everywhere. It happens everywhere. People are going to take from each other and see what they can get.
Yeah.
Cut the person out who originally had the wonderful concept.
So what was it like for you with this David and Goliath kind of story? I know you said it wasn't easy,
It
And I,
wasn't. But you know what? I had amazing people around me. I was very fortunate. Listen, it wasn't easy. It really wasn't, because there was a lot of stuff that I knew nothing about and I still know very little about. I don't know how to navigate law or legal stuff, like just in general. Like I understand laws and I can follow the law, but like being a lawyer and understanding how to navigate the actual laws to be able to fight a case like
yeah.
taking on DC Warner Brothers, which is very intimidating. I mean, I'm just a math teacher, and at the time, I was a single mom. I mean, like, you couldn't get any more just normal person that has like no idea of how to deal with the situation. So, I mean, the people who came into my life once Mark kind of pushed me to make contacts was really important. And I didn't realize how important it was at the time until everything came together. And I was like, oh, okay. Like this was supposed to happen this way, because had I done it earlier, I might not have connected with these people. And that's something that when we were really pushing, I was doing the PR campaign basically, going to conventions the first time in 2014 for the 75th anniversary. Really like saying, hi, I exist and we're doing something. Like we're trying to figure it out. We'll let you know what happens, you know. And I was getting out there, and the people that really got me involved with that, Travis Langley, who is a psychologist and an author, and he got me to my first convention and doing panels. And then he got me to San Diego Comic Con. That was my second one that I ever went to. And it was completely intimidating, but so much fun. I was like, this is a whole other city within the city. This is crazy, but this is fun. It really was. And so just that's just a few. I mean, there's so many people that have come together to really push the whole public outcry. I mean, Mark had been doing it for a few years before I started going out there because he was pushing for his book. But I mean, he was out there telling the Bill story. So, like, that's fine. Go out there and tell the Bill Finger story while you push for your book, because people are going to ask you questions and they're going to curious, and it's only going to help and bring more awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, like, all of this stuff coming together. And yes, it is a David versus Goliath, but I wasn't alone. So David wasn't alone for this one, even though it was a Goliath, you know, enemy that we were going against. But, you know, there were also, you know, Bob Kane's words from his book also helped, you know, kind of solidify why Bill should be getting this, you know, byline and things like that. So, I mean, there were things in place now that we didn't have in place back in the day to help us with everything that we were able to accomplish.
Yeah, yeah. Now you mentioned Paul Levitz being supportive of it. Was there anybody else at DC Comics that you can remember being supportive of it, or maybe even helping to champion it?
You know, the people who worked there were very careful. They would like to keep their jobs. And I fully understand that. Paul Levitz, you know, he actually got to know my grandfather a little bit. He was very young at the time, but he was working at DC towards the end of Bill's career. So, you know, he admired him and felt that he needed to get more recognition. And he was verbal about that, but he wasn't verbal just for Bill. He did a lot of stuff for a lot of those golden age writers and artists that were not getting compensated when they were pushed out after, you know, the 60s, when they were asking for health care. Of course, it comes down to their health, right? We want everything from you, but we're not going to give you your health. So It's
What? Okay, so I need to ask this also. Neil Adams. Do you know who Neil Adams is,
yes,
or I should say was at this point? He's passed. But
yes,
he was a champion for the Superman creators.
yes.
Was he aware of the situation with Bill Finger at all? And if so, did he say anything or help you out with anything?
Neil is a man that I used to kill with kindness. He's a sweet, sweet man. He was very sweet, but some of the things that he said were not very nice. So I was always super sweet to him. He did an amazing thing as far as bringing awareness to the creators being crapped on by the companies and not getting what they deserve. Okay. So Neil was an amazing voice for that. And I'm not going to ever take that away from him. But did he directly help Bill's case? No. No, he did not. He helped the Superman boys, which in a way helped Bill and other artists and writers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, yes, if you want to say because of what he did for them, helped
With the
Bill,
setting
sure.
a precedent, that kind of a thing.
But did he directly help them? No, and I mean, he had his truth, so I let him speak his truth. It wasn't entirely truth.
What did he say? I never knew if he said anything about this situation.
He really felt that Bill didn't fight for himself and that he should have fought for himself. Well, you know what? Some artists are incapable of navigating business, period. Neil was not one of those people. He could navigate being an artist and a businessman.
Well, Neil wasn't known for holding back what he thought about anything.
No, which is fine because I have no filter.
Even
Also,
every artist with a portfolio that ever went to his table at a convention is fully aware of that.
well, I'm sorry, that's too much too. I mean, like have a little bit of respect. Don't show up with your portfolio unless it's a portfolio show.
Well, he would be doing reviews and he would critique, and it would be brutal, brutal. But people would learn. They'd get better at it
because they looked at him as a master. Which I mean, yes, he was a master of his craft, and I get that. I don't know. I'm so respectful. I just don't think that's. Here, look at my artwork. Tell me what I'm doing wrong and right, please. It's just like.
I think he kind of enjoyed it.
Well, I'm sure it was an ego stroke for him. Again, they looked to him as a master. So, I don't know. There's a time and a place for that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Did you ever talk to Frank Miller about any of this?
I got to meet him briefly at MegaCon last year. He's a hard one to catch. He and I have been at a few movie premieres together, and I keep missing him. And I'm like, there's Frank. I need to go say hello. And then I'd be like, oh, he's gone. I don't get to say hello this time.
He's quicker than he looks.
I know, right? So when he was at MegaCon last year, I was a guest there last year, so I was like, I'm gonna make sure. So I went up to his handle. I'm like, listen, this is who I am. Like, I've been trying to introduce myself for a while, and we keep missing each other. She's like, of course. So she totally made it happen. It was really nice. He's like, oh, it's so nice to meet you, and he had some nice things to say about Bill. It was really brief. He had a long line of people waiting to get autographs and handshakes and all that stuff. So I don't like to, take up too much time when they're at conventions because I know that's their money time. So it was really nice.
Very polite.
Yeah. Well, I understand it's a business. They're there to make money. I mean, I go to make money, but I really go to see the fans. That's why I go to the conventions. I don't ever really expect to walk out with making any money. I expect that I've had great conversations with people who know the story and people who don't know the story. I still come across people who are like, I don't know who Bill is.
Any convention experiences that really stand out in a positive way?
I would need a little more criteria on that.
With I guess involving fans. Any fans that have come up to say really kind things, or maybe have went above and beyond what you expected to see at a convention, or anything along those lines, in a positive way again.
Yeah,
In a
I
positive
mean,
way.
I've had a lot of positive experiences where fans were like, "Oh my god, I knew you were going to be here," and it's like, well, tell the promoters they need to do a better job. you know, I've had people come up and be like, "I came specifically because I knew that you were here," and then when they see me, they get totally emotional and they start breaking down and cry, and then of course I have to hug them because I feel so emotional with them. um, it's usually experiences like that. But when I was at the Rhode Island Comic Con back in 2018, I think it was. Yeah, 2018. And I had this young guy walk past who was wearing a Gotham City sweatshirt. And I was so bored. Like, they had me in the worst location.
Oh, Rhode Island Comic Con.
Whatever. So I'm like,
kind.
hey, you're a Batman fan. He's like, yeah, kind of. And I'm like, so do you know who Bill Finger is? He's like, no. And I'm like, okay. So I told him the story. I'm like, this is who I am, and this is who my grandfather was, and did it. He goes, what are you doing over here? That was like stuck in Artist Alley. Okay. And so I'm like, it's where they put me. I mean, whatever. I'm trying to sell my artwork at the same time, but I'm also telling my grandfather's story, blah, blah, blah. And he walked away like thinking I was full of shit, like literally full of shit. And I'm like, okay.
Because they stuck you like, yeah. And
whatever. I gave him my card. And like a month later, he hit me up on Facebook. And he's like, listen, I want to apologize to you because I didn't believe you. And then I watched the documentary, and oh my god, shame on Rhode Island Comic Con. You should have been up in the celebrity row with like the celebrities. What were you doing? I'm so sorry I didn't believe you.
That's funny. Man, oh man. Have you met any comic creators at conventions? Any experiences with them? We talked about Neil. We talked about Frank. But has anybody else stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I've done panels with Denny O'Neil. My goodness, so many at this point. Wolf, I did one. Wow, my memory sucks with names. I'm so sorry. A lot of different artists, for Batman throughout the years. So obviously, I do a lot of Batman panels where they talk about the history of Batman and things like that. As far as like big names, I think that's kind of it. Trying to think, because usually the big name ones are out in San Diego, and those were a while ago when I did those. Yeah, I mean, it's usually the current artist or someone from the Silver Age.
Did you ever have a conversation with either Dan DiDio or Jim Lee?
Yeah, I've talked to both of them. They're very nice. I mean, when they did the San Diego Comic-Con Museum back in 2019 was the first year that they opened it, and Batman was the first inductee into the museum. So that was really cool. I got to speak to Jim and Dan there. Jim was the only one that mentioned Bob and Bill during the induction, which I thought was pretty interesting that he was the only one that brought it up, but and I always make a point of saying hello to them whenever we're in the same event, which is, a few times a year. It's kind of strange how the circle is kind of like, because I know that Jim is still in DC and Dan retired, so he has his own little circuit going with his own comic book that he's started and all that stuff. So I know
Yeah.
they're working on their own projects, but I always like to see them. They're amazing people, and they're so appreciative. And I'm appreciative of them because they really do, they want to honor Bill and his contribution. So.
That's great. Did you ever get a chance to meet Tim Sale? Carbon Dioxide is asking. Tim Sale had passed away a few years ago as well, but he was the artist on The Long Halloween, in case you haven't.
I am so much better with faces than names, to be honest. I don't think so. I don't think we were at any events together when I'm thinking of, because I'm trying. I usually walk the artist area quite a bit just to like see who's doing what and kind of try to remember people's names. I feel so bad that I can't. Again, I'm better with faces.
Don't.
Hard.
No
Between
worries.
and conventions. I taught college for 8 years. Okay, like that's a lot of students for 8 years, and then conventions on top of that. Like it's just a lot.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Man. Now, is there anything that maybe you feel about your grandfather that people don't know, that they're not aware of, that you'd want them to be aware of?
Well, I mean, I don't know if everyone's aware that he also wrote sci-fi movies in the 60s. I mean, his most famous one is The Green Slime. So, I mean, he did not pigeonhole himself into just comics. He wrote for TV and radio and movies, and he would take the writing jobs wherever he could. He wrote for the military, he wrote instruction manuals. I mean, he really took any and all jobs that he could. But the movies are interesting. He wrote a few movies. The other more famous one is Tracking the Moon Beast. 60s sci-fi, little, campy, but good.
Yeah, absolutely. That stuff is great. I didn't know that he wrote The Green Slime.
Yes.
All right, well, now I know. Man.
Yes, he co-wrote that with Charles Sinclair, who he also co-wrote the Batman episode for the 60 series.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yes, Charles Sinclair was his best friend towards the end of his life. And they did a lot of writing for TV shows together and the movies. And they also lived in the same building. Unfortunately, Charles was the one that found Bill after he had passed.
Yeah.
So they were very close. And I did get to meet Charles. He was a lovely, lovely man. He really was.
How old was your grandfather when he passed?
He was just a few weeks before his 60th birthday.
Ah, man. Boy, oh boy. Revolving around the character of Batman, is there anything that you feel like, I don't know, that how can I word this? Anything you feel like maybe over the years regarding your grandfather's contribution that maybe they should have kept that aspect of it, or because there's a couple things that have obviously changed throughout the life and history of Batman, and certain things have stuck and certain things have gone. Is there anything, I don't know how familiar you are with the character, especially with his contribution to a couple of the things that are no longer there, but is there anything with the character or the history of it?
I'm not 100, again, I didn't gravitate towards comics, so I didn't read comics growing up. I mean, I've read a few more here and there as I've gotten older, but it's still not a medium that I gravitate towards. So I would not be super familiar with, I mean, other than like them taking the guns out because they didn't want children to see gun violence for whatever reason, even though they had war magazines and, cowboys and Indians. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, they definitely made, I mean, Batman kills a couple people, I think, in his debut issue.
Yeah.
Definitely, he snaps a neck, as far as what I'm thinking, remembering from Detective Comics, that first issue that he was in.
Well, he kills the Joker in the first Joker episode.
Yeah, and then they have to find a way to obviously bring him back.
Yes, because he was so popular.
And that becomes a motif throughout the history of those characters.
Joker, or did somebody else pick up the mantle?
But yeah, that's true too. But any of the characters that your grandfather created, any of them stand out to you as being your favorite?
Catwoman. Selena, yes. She's all feline. I love it.
Who's your favorite interpretation of the character? There's been so many.
Still, Michelle is my favorite still. Michelle Pfeiffer, yeah.
Who was your favorite from the 66 series?
Oh, they were all amazing. They were all beautiful. Can't even compare them. They're in a category of all their own. I like that they used several different women for it too. I really do like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, they used, they had 2 Riddlers, right? Because they had John Astin, and they had Frank Gorshin. And I'm trying to think if they had other... Cesar Romero the whole time as the Joker.
Yes, with his painted mustache.
Yeah, I love Cesar
So
Romero.
Weird.
He did such a great job.
He did. I didn't even care.
Especially if anyone's familiar with his work before and after. I don't think anyone in the world would guess. Yeah, Cesar Romero. Get him for the Joker. Burgess Meredith was great as Penguin. I absolutely love that series. I know that it's like it's campy and whatnot, but
it's
man,
fun.
it's just great. It's rewatchable. Is there a version of Batman that you prefer the best out of any of the interpretations?
The animated series from the 90s.
Oh, that one is, yes, definitive.
Yes, and then even right after that, when they came out with Batman Beyond, I was a little upset. I'm like, what is this crap? Like, what? This is not Batman. What is this? And then I started watching. I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. This is done so well. Just like the animated series. Like, I apologize for being an ass.
yeah, Batman Beyond was great. But I felt the same way, too, when I was a kid at the time watching it. And I was like, I don't know what this is about. Like, I don't like, this isn't Batman.
Yeah.
But it was great.
They did a really good job with it. And I'd like to see a live action of that.
Absolutely. Man, it's still probably... Outside the comics, obviously, I still think it is the definitive interpretation of the character. It is just, they nail it. Which is strange because it's an animated series and at the time was geared towards children.
Yeah.
I don't think they would make that kind of a show now. I think it would be considered too intense, which is a shame.
No, it would be too dark. It would be definitely for adults.
Yeah.
But a lot of this stuff coming out of the 90s was not for children, period. Including the Batman animated series, just because of the darkness of it. Really wasn't for kids. It was really for the adults. But I mean, watch the old Ren and Stimpy show. That's not for kids. I'm sorry. There's so much sexual stuff going on in that show.
Well, I mean, folk tales, fables, and fairy tales, all that stuff is never really, like, for kids.
No, it's not, although they tell it to kids all the time.
But yeah, kids love dark stuff. They love conflict and story. They love, the good and the evil and the epicness of it all, the heightened drama. That's why it's always so strange when people are like, oh, you got to really make it safe for kids. It's like, that's not what kids like.
It's going to be destructive. It's in their nature.
Yeah, they'd love to see that stuff play out. Oh, yes, Otto Preminger. That's right, Mr. Freeze. He was 2 different actors. That's correct. I forgot about him. What Geeks Do Network says, animated series, the best cartoon ever made. Look at that.
Yeah, well, it was the first time that they did the animation that particular way. I don't know if you know what I'm referring to.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Because
so if people are not aware, instead of putting the shadows on the highlights, they took a black paper and put all the highlights on it, and that's what gives it that dark, rich feeling because it started with a black piece of paper. And that was something that no other animator had been doing ever. It was the first time they ever approached it in that manner. And it worked so well. I
oh
was in
yeah.
art school at the time, so I was fascinated with this stuff. I was like, wow, that's so cool. I would have never thought of that. Like, amazing.
Now you mentioned yourself being an artist as well. What kind of stuff do you gravitate towards?
um, I do a little bit of everything. You can see a lot of my stuff on Instagram if you want to see stuff that I've done. I've done a lot of comic stuff because that's what the fans like. I do a lot of like flowers and pretty things like that. I don't know. I've done a wide range of stuff. I do some, you know, Pollock kind of esque splatter paint stuff. You know, I just have fun with it. And then I do some pencil drawing and stuff like that. So
Nice.
yeah, I stick to the basics. Nothing fancy. I paint with acrylic. I mean, I just have fun with it. That's
But when I paint with acrylic too. I've tried painting with oils. It messes me up. I
you know.
never have proper ventilation for oils.
Oh really? I took one oil painting class, and I loved it, but it is so involved. And you know, it's so funny. My mom, bless her, when she signed me up for this class, she's like, I didn't realize how expensive this class was going to be with the amount of stuff that you need for oil painting. Like, I had no idea, Mom.
Yeah.
I legitimate had no idea. And she's like, it's a good thing I would support your art. Because, I mean, you need so much stuff for the oil paint. And then the
Oh
paint
yeah.
itself is expensive. So, yeah, I'll stick to the acrylic where I can buy a tube for like 50 cents.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, those watching know. I'm not too crazy with art supplies and whatnot. Even my pencil is just like a Bic mechanical
Nice.
pencil.
Oh my goodness. Since the 80s, these yellow ones were the tips.
Oh, those are great.
These are the best for drawing. They're so awesome. Since the 80s.
Yeah. Those are great. Man. But good question here from Comics for Life. Says, do you have any interest in working on a comic book yourself?
No, not really.
Are you soured on the industry in that respect, or is it just no interest because just the medium in general is kind of outside your purview?
You know, I did a little bit of cartooning when I was young in my early teens. I took a cartooning class. It was fun. No, I realized I'm not good at replicating the same thing every time. And you kind of need to be good at that to be able to do a comic book. And I'm not. I'm more like a splash page or a cover.
I'm the same
one and
way.
done.
Same way. Yeah, the sequential art form is a whole other. It's about a test of patience. The way I view it, because you really have to be good with the storytelling, and you have to be so patient with the research and getting everything in the composition, and then, like you said, also the consistency, especially among the characters and everything else involved. There's so much to it. It's a whole different thing to just go in there, make a cover, make a pin-up, make a poster, make a trading card, whatever it is.
Mhm.
The storytelling is a whole other thing. What about writing?
You know, I am not a writer. Even though Bill was a writer, I am not. When I was younger, growing up in grade school, sorry, you know, I had hearing issues, so I couldn't really read very quickly. I didn't always understand the words that were being said. couldn't hear phonetically, so I didn't
Mm.
gravitate towards words. I gravitated towards visual, so I did a lot of drawing. And then when I started like navigating what classes I really liked math. I was pretty good at it, except for when it came to like the word problems and having to read a lot of stuff and like that part I struggle with. But like as far as like dealing with numbers and patterns, I was really good at that. And so yeah, even still to this day, I need to write a book, and people have been telling me for about 15 years that I need to write a book, but I just every time I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go right. No, I'm not gonna go do that right now because it's not what I want to do, and I really don't want to do that, so I'm not gonna do it.
Well, the longer you push it off, the more you have to write about eventually.
I know, but
There you go.
I got a lot to say already. I just need to do it, and I say that often, and I just maybe if I keep telling myself, then I'll actually start doing it.
Are you writing any of it down, even if it's not supposed to be a book, but more just like a get it out there kind of a thing? Even just
No,
for yourself?
I need to utilize a recorder and just kind of tell my stories, and then have someone kind of help me put stuff together. I think that's probably going to be the best way. Or
Mm.
have someone like interview. Like I do really well with this, the back and forth, and like I think that's more of what I need is someone who's willing to work with me with the back and forth, and then kind of like compile it and help me put it together. I think that's probably what I'm waiting for is someone who's willing to work with me on
Well, there you go. If anyone ends up watching this or is watching it right now and you want to make that happen, reach out to Athena.
that. Hear my crazy stories.
Yeah. Well, those are the best kind to read about.
Oh, hopefully they will be interesting. I find it crazy and interesting.
Man, Athena, this has been great. Thank you so much for spending some time with me tonight. Really appreciate it. Before we say goodbye, where can they find you?
I am on Facebook. I have my personal page, which is no longer personal. And then I also have my actual fan page, both under my name. Or you can find me on Instagram under my name. It's Athena Finger Real because my original one got hacked, of course. Or you can find me on X under my name.
All
And
right.
that's where I'm at.
Fantastic. Thank you so much again, everybody in the chat. Thank you guys too. This has been a great conversation tonight. I learned a lot, and I also seriously, it's humbling to be in the presence of comic book royalty.
Oh, stop it. We're just people here.
Well, the Batman character has meant a lot to me throughout the course of my life as well, and it's good that your grandfather is finally getting, for several years now, the acknowledgement and the credit that he so richly deserved. So, yeah, God bless Bill Finger. Absolutely.
Well, thank you. And thank the fans. Thank you, the fans, because without you, we wouldn't be talking about this. And I wouldn't be celebrating Batman every year. So, thank you.
There you go. Man. All right, thank you so much, Athena. Everybody in the chat, thank you guys as well. Hope you all have a great night. I'm going to be back tomorrow night at 9:30 Eastern with Ryan Drost. We're going to be talking about his book, among other things, but I hope to see you guys then. This has been a great 200th episode. Thank you again so much, Athena. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. In case I don't see you tomorrow, I hope you have a great night and an even better tomorrow. I'll see you guys soon. All the best.